Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechvalley.com, and as you can see here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having a lot of fun with all three assignments, and my column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and I write about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And with us today, the land and farming has always been a good part of the Jewish religion, but with us today is the head of the New York State Grange, Steve Coye. Welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you.
And Emily Shoop, who is a lecturer and prime supporter in Albany County of the Grange. And so that Steve, while the New York State Grange is based in Cortland,
Yes.
You're still an Albany County
That's
resident.
correct.
So, well, that's terrific. So
Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
is the Grange and the
right.
history and what it tries to
We
accomplish?
have a half hour.
Yeah. Well, I'm a city slicker, so even though, like Mark says, really just keep in mind that if people who read the Bible, and hope they do, that it's just the Jewish people they came into the land with a piece of land, and they were really mostly farmers. So, and there are still Jewish farmers today, and I know them in the Capital District and around, but originally it was a very agricultural society.
Absolutely. Well, the Grange came into existence around 150 years ago. A group of agricultural-related men, which, thinking-wise, they were way ahead of their time, if you read about these gentlemen, got the idea that in order for those engaged in agricultural pursuits to get ahead in this world, they needed to be organized. And they saw the benefits of organization amongst the city people, and it did not exist out in the rural areas. And in addition to being able to get ahead economically and in this vein, they also saw the need for them to be able to socialize and to get together because, they were basically isolated people. Oliver Kelly himself, which was one of the prime founders, we like to call him the missionary of the Grange, let out from Washington, D.C., and homesteaded on the east bank of the Mississippi River, up in Elk River, Minnesota. And speaking of just going to a new land, the first time that he knew anything about practical farming was the first time that he dropped a plowshare into the ground. Mm-hmm. And he went from there, and he saw the need, being out there all by himself and everybody scattered around the place, that they had to get together, they had to have a common cause, they had to be literate in book learning as far as practical farming in order to make a go of it. And as a matter of fact, talk about karma or whatever, he really didn't make a go of it with his farming enterprise there. But still he had the right idea, and he had basically 7 or 8 other friends that agreed with him from different parts of the United States, and they met together formally on December 4th, 1867 in the office of William Saunders in Washington, D.C., a very premier horticulturalist of the day, and formally organized the National Grange of the Order of Patrons of Husbandry. That's a real quick nutshell of the formation of the organization.
And there's a birthplace marker in D.C. where this occurred.
That is correct.
So next year is the 150th?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So are you planning something on the statewide level? Or
there's
something?
all kinds of big things going on
Planting
nationally.
now for...
Oh yeah, because this coming session will be the 150th national session. Basically, it's not because they couldn't count.
No.
It's because they had 2 sessions in 1 year, back in the 1800s. And
Okay.
so this year is the kickoff, and by the way, it will be held in Washington, D.C.
Good,
And
appropriately.
and
When will it be held?
second week in November.
Okay. Oh,
And
after election day. Okay.
yes, after election.
So you're not taking anyone away from the polls.
That's right. That's right.
I wanted to ask Emily, what does the Grange look like now to you?
It looks like a place for a community to get to know each other better and to work within their community. But I also think it looks different depending on, as Steve said, if you're in a rural area versus now an urban area.
And what do you,
You're a farmer yourself, I mean, or what?
I'm not, grew up in the city of Albany, still live in the city of Albany, have about that much land.
but they talk
2x2.
about wanting, when they do rezone Albany, they want to allow some farming in
Yeah.
the city, you know, whether it's raising chickens or whatever. Talk about that. Do you know about that?
Yeah, a little bit. So I know that particularly Capital City Grange, which is a newer grange in the state of New York, and we're right in the city of Albany. So we spent a lot of time in beginning of 2016, end of 2015, really focusing on what kinds of things can bring some more agriculture into the city of Albany. So we've been looking at how many farmers markets are available, what type of urban farming are people into, what do they understand, what do they still need education in, and really trying to see what agricultural education we need to bring to the city as a group, as a Grange.
And what have you found?
Well, we found that there's a lot of people who are eager and they're excited, but they don't really know where to go with it yet. So we're kind of trying to start forming a small committee that can start helping the community to see what they can do.
That sounds exciting. Do you have cooperation from the Common Council or the mayor? Or?
Not yet, we're getting there, we're slow going. We just chartered at the end of 2015, so we're getting there.
So they're going to teach a little bit farming skills to the kids?
Could
I
be.
guess would be. I mean, because again, that's why we're thinking, and we have so many people on the show, and of course in Albany, and like any city has inner city kids, and some of it is just like, hey, you know, I mean, just you feel good about farming. You know, you just feel good. You know, you just feel good about it. I know my wife's not a farmer from Cambridge, but you know, you just even plant some tomatoes.
Right.
You know, you don't have to have 1,000 acres. It's interesting. We're on the Jewish View, so I have to put in a Jewish idea that this is for crime and punishment very fast, instead of throwing a guy in jail because they stole, and almost, it sounds almost like gorilla cages. I mean, because that's one of my 10 jobs that I visit people in prisons, that they say, you're going to work it off. You're going to pay it off. And like, again, as I started to show, that there wasn't, you know, it's not like working in a factory. You're talking 3,000 years ago. You know, you'd work on the farm. So instead of, so what was happening, I was saying, that instead of sitting a guy in a prison cage, literally a cage, hey, they're, you know, and these people are, I'm a listener to loser who steals something. They don't have a job. They don't feel good about themselves. You know, there's something totally wrong with them, obviously, if they're stealing. And on the other hand, it builds them up. You know, you plant a seed, it grows, you harvest, and you pay off your debt. But I'm just saying the point is not the crime punishment, is not to show for it, but the idea is just the farming, you make self-esteem and feel good about it. So, you know, I mean, I think whatever you're trying to do is just also has a side benefit and a major benefit of helping these inner city kids, of just, you know, helping them grow. And it just, I think a lot of kids really, instead of video games, sitting there with an iPad the whole day, you know, get out there and, you know, feed the earth. And I think that would be important really for really all youth, to tell you the truth.
And to hitchhike on what you said, the average person today is about 3 generations removed from actively being on a farm. And you get into some of the inner city areas, and not city areas, not necessarily inner city, and they have no concept of what is on the other side of the grocery shelf.
No, I know.
No,
I
no,
totally,
I whatsoever.
I always
totally
thought
agree
tomatoes
with you.
just showed up in the supermarket. I didn't
He's
know
from
where
Brooklyn
they came
over
from. I'm
there.
from
Lucky if
Brooklyn,
there's
so,
a tree
you
there.
know, it was there.
No, I totally agree with you. I've dealt with kids, like I say, I have 10 jobs, and you even ask them where an egg came from.
Price chopper.
You ask them
Price
from
chopper,
an
yeah.
egg. I mean, you know, and they're like amazed. And, you know, I'm more for a hands-on kind of person also. A lot of, like I said, the Judaism is hands-on. There's a lot of natural things going on. And kids today in the cities I don't think people appreciate, and that's what comes to a farmer also. Like you say, you know, I always say, even on a spiritual term, pray to God for food. Just pray that the Price Chopper is open 24 hours a day. I understand with a farmer in the olden days, you know, even nowadays, oh, it's drought. Who cares a drought, not a drought? Oh, it's raining. Oh, it's a pain in my neck because now I can't go out and play baseball. But for a farmer, you're giving them life. And if it doesn't rain, you know, their eyes are to heaven more than, you know, like I say, the eyes are to the mall. That's an important thing.
And I just wanted to point out that coming up later this year in October, you have the state convention coming here
That's
to
correct.
Albany. You don't have to travel too far.
No, this year I don't.
So what's going to go on at that conference or the convention?
Our conference is an annual thing.
Right.
It's a 4-day conference, and during that time, of course, we have housekeeping things that we have to do because basically, well, to help you get an idea of what that is, the Grange is a hierarchical organization. There's a national at the top and the state Grange in the middle, and then the locals at the bottom, and they are chartered by the national. And basically speaking, the state Grange is the major power, hierarchical power in the state. The national keeps their hands off as long as there is a state organization, as long as we stay within the parameters. And at that convention also, the local Granges throughout the year in their various meetings come up with particular ideas, and they say, you know, this is something that ought to be corrected, be it whether it's something in the medical field or whether it's something directly related with agriculture or military or none of the above, because our policy is very broad-based. They write a resolution and send it to us, and our delegates debate it. And if we want to make it part of our policy, they adopt it, and then our legislative representative takes it down to Albany or wherever it needs to be taken to do something about it.
Do you have vendor booths, information booths, and vendors that come to the Grange conference?
Some. It's on a limited basis.
It is, because
Yes.
you're having this at the Best Western Sovereign Hotel.
That's correct.
And there isn't much space.
That's
It's
correct.
Not like it's not like a conference room like the Albany Hilton.
Right. We do have a display room, and we have some vendors that participate in there. Like, for example, FarmNet will come and set up a booth. They don't generally man it, you know, but they have the things there that, you know, people can help themselves
I think
to.
you have to say person it.
Yeah, person it.
No.
There we go.
Mark is correct.
No,
Let me
no,
ask
I
you,
just
Mark,
wanted
I
to-
wanted to say that, I don't know that you're members, but one of the big issues is that the small-time farmers are just becoming extinct, or I guess less, and you know, these big farmer conglomerates are just eating up all the farms, so
Yes.
can you address that?
Yeah, that's an issue for us as well, from the standpoint that a lot of Granges were located in smaller communities, and with the exit of the smaller farms, there goes the businesses in the community as well. My dad used to have a kind of a saying. He says, for every 5 farms that go in the town, there goes one business, because farmers spend their money locally. And so with the departure of the family farm and the kids going off to greener pastures or whatever, and the land being either left to be fallow or else sucked up by the big farms, as you say, the individuals are, the nucleus of the community is gone. And so therefore, there go the churches, there goes the Grange, there goes everything that's related to a community organization. And I think there's a little bit of a paradigm shift there in some parts of the country, where we're seeing a return to more what have been referred to as hobby farmers, particularly when you get down into Putnam and Westchester County. You're starting to see those pop up a lot.
People have money, it's just like a
Right.
side, that's a side, they're not looking
And
for really.
in the city of New York, rooftop gardens.
That's right.
Really?
And
That's a big thing.
yep,
Yes.
it's a big thing. And
In fact, they were talking about building, well, relatively large building, but one of the accommodations that the residents wanted the builder to make would be the rooftop gardens, so
Right.
that it kind of helps filter the air and make the air cleaner
right.
also.
And so, basically speaking, on a national policy, the Grange has room for what is sometimes referred to as industrial agriculture because it's needed, in order to feed the world, but at the same time, we support and we encourage the more local, the more localized operation because they have a definite, they fulfill a definite need within the community with the farm markets and the fresh produce and of course, just looking at the farm markets, they've taken off in the last dozen years.
Absolutely. You have 175 local Granges.
That's correct.
Does that include the Albany City one?
Absolutely. That's the newest
So you had
chartered Grange in New
170
York State.
You had 174 before Emily came along.
Yes.
How many of those do you expect would be at this conference? Will they all attend, or?
Our delegate system is regulated a little bit.
Okay.
It's regulated on the county basis,
Okay.
and each county is entitled to send 2 delegates, plus an additional delegate for every 100 members or major fraction thereof.
How does it, so it's like a weighted vote?
It's
is
a
what you're
weighted,
saying.
right.
So how, when they come here for a conference, that takes them away from the farm?
Yeah, well, a lot
Right.
of them, shall I say, are not actively involved in the agricultural pursuits at this particular time.
Okay.
Some of them have retired from farming. Some of them have taken on other pursuits. Like, for example, I grew up on a farm out in central New York, spent the first 30 years of my life on one.
What town?
Town of Smyrna,
Smyrna.
County
Okay.
of Shenango.
Yes.
And-
Mark
used to
knows
work-
every city in New York
I used
State,
to
I
be on
guarantee you that.
WCHN in Norwich, so.
Oh,
I see.
heavens,
Okay.
yeah, 17 miles up down the road.
That's right.
And I still own a piece of that, by the way. I just
Oh.
couldn't, it had been in the family since 1832, and I couldn't let it all go.
That's it.
You know,
So you
and
got a little parcel.
That's right. But anyway, allergies amongst the big main force, forced me to take another career change, when it comes to that. But
And where'd you go with the career change?
right down here, I worked at the state senate for 38 years. I used to see you come by my office.
What was your, what were you doing there?
I was a supervisor in the Senate document office in the Capitol.
Right.
And
Okay.
so,
I wanted you to say it. I didn't
yes,
say it.
yes.
Mark, at the beginning, I didn't want to interrupt you,
Yes,
and I
you
have a
did.
little, I know, I don't interrupt people, I interrupt Mark, that's all. But in any case, you say a farmer has to be, someone who's learned, that's like, you studied even in the 1860s to read a book. And I used to, again, I say I have 10 jobs, and I had to supervise kosher milk on a dairy farm in New York, of course, near here. And, maybe I'm a little prejudiced, but I figure, all right, what's a farmer? Someone takes care of cows, you need a cow degree. So there's one guy, he's standing there with a pole, right with boots, high-level boots, in the mud, in the barn, and he's got a pole, and he's sitting there with a computer on the, on the stand. And, so he said, this guy, I says, all right, taking care of cows, what do you have to do? He says, no, that person is a graduate from Cornell. Graduate from Cornell, and taking care of cows. But like you say, that really gave me an education that,
Sure.
that these people, they said they have to know antibiotics. It really is. Once I was, walked around and learned the business, that was my job, just to be sure it was
Sure.
kosher. I go walking around finding out what's happening. And, like you say, they said, really, if you're going to run a farm today, you better know how to use that computer.
Absolutely, and this is one of our big initiatives at this particular time. as rural electrification was back in the 30s, and that is getting broadband out into the rural areas, because it's practically a necessity these days, and there are an awful lot of rural areas that are very underserved with any kind of computer access, say nothing about broadband.
But I think the governor
so-
just allowed it, didn't he?
Yeah, it takes time to build it out.
It takes time to build it out, and the unfortunate thing is that, well, or fortunate, depending on which end of the aspect of this you're on,
Right.
it's an economic decision, and it's, well, case in point, when cable TV first came around, people in the villages and the cities had it, but it didn't go out very far because these guys wanted 20 houses a mile
That's
in
right.
order to serve. It's the same thing with broadband today. Exactly the same thing.
But
If they
it's going
don't,
to happen, though.
it's going to
It
happen.
happens, but it takes
But it takes
decades.
time.
Really?
And-
I thought once they said it's
So
going to
it
happen, I
sounds good-
figure in a
Well,
month.
it sounds
yeah.
good for the governor to say it, but then the reality is that, you can only work, you got to work where it's so practical. Look, we're in the library, Albany Public Library, we don't have fiber here. There's fiber outside the building, but they would have to run 6 fiber links in order to make it profitable for Time Warner Cable. They couldn't just run 1 or 2 just to our studio. They'd have to make available 6 or 7 fiber links so that the other offices on this block would be able to take advantage of the fiber. Make it affordable.
Good friend of mine, very, very huge maple producer out in the middle of Delaware County. Ships all over the world, Last I knew, he was still having to rely on dial-up.
Well, that's pretty sad. Was it Pinder's Corners?
Well, it's the other side of Pinder's Corners. It was just out in Harpersfield, actually.
Harper's- Okay.
And so-
Because Pinder's Corners, you know why that's famous.
U.S. Senator
Daniel Patrick Moynihan
Patrick Moynihan
lived
Pinder's-
there.
Yes, he did.
And that's where Hillary Clinton kicked off her U.S. Senate bid when Moynihan retired.
Yes, and I should say Kirsten Gillibrand kicked hers off at the farm I was telling you about.
So,
Why don't you write a book about the trivial ideas of New York State? He knows every inch of what happened in
I
New York
wanted to
State.
ask you about the Grange. You give out scholarship. You have a scholarship fund, the Denise Scholarship Fund.
The Denise Scholarship Fund.
And what does that do, and how is that awarded? And
That is, we give up to 4 or 5 scholarships a year, depending on, the applications. It's, they do not have to be Grange members to be eligible, but they do have to go into the study of agriculture. The Denise people had a huge agricultural operation in western New York, and they wanted to have a legacy left, and so they
right.
left a scholarship to the
So every
Grange.
year you give out how much money in scholarship?
They're $1,000 apiece,
Okay.
scholarships.
And then you also have the Freestone Education Award.
But
Right.
these things, do you have to go for farming? Do you have to declare a major in some kind of agricultural studies, or?
That's correct,
All
in
right,
some
good.
type of agriculture, but I mean, it's not just milking cows,
Right.
it's anything in the agricultural field.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, I learned that also. It's getting very sophisticated,
Oh, absolutely.
it's
So
not, like
the-
you say, it's not just building.
So Susan
Milking cows.
Freestone is from Interlaken.
Susan Freest, it was named after her because
Right.
she was the junior superintendent for the State Grange for a number of years. And originally, that scholarship was limited to children, well, it still is limited to kids that have come, that are Grange members and have participated in the junior organization first. But back in the day, it was also limited, the fact it could only be used at the New York State Agricultural and Technical
Ag and
institutes.
tech
The 2 years
schools,
like
yeah.
Morrisville, Cobleskill, and that. And
Delhi.
in Delhi,
Yeah.
you know, and since they have broadened the base of those particular schools, we broadened the base of where it was applicable.
There was a New York State Agricultural Society. Was that tied in with the Grange?
No, it's not tied in with the Grange, but it is still very much a viable organization. They meet once a year. In Syracuse, have for the last 20 years,
They used to
first week in
give, I don't know
January.
if they still give out journalism awards, but they used
Yes,
to give out
they
journalism.
do. It's called the Cap Creole Journalism
That's right.
Award.
I won that one year.
Did you?
Yes.
Right.
Because I did a broadcast story, a series of stories about how upstate and downstate couldn't exist without agriculture being tied in, because upstate needs the downstate markets to export, and the downstate markets need the upstate crops to help them be profitable and grow. And when I pointed all this out and I showed how we're all one state that way, that got me the award.
Absolutely.
So I told them I'm from Brooklyn, and when I went up to receive the $50 award, they said, I said, you know, the only thing we grow in Brooklyn is marijuana. And when
It's a cash crop over here.
and when Shirley Chisholm from Brooklyn went to Congress, she was put on the U.S. Agriculture Committee, mainly because of the food stamps, but someone asked who didn't know, why would someone from Brooklyn be on the Agriculture Committee? And they said, well, someone heard that a tree grows in Brooklyn.
That is
So
funny.
that was, so that was it. And then I
Well, you always bring up, why don't you bring up one of the details that you are almost a New York State historian, what is the biggest cash, you know, what is the biggest trade in New York State, and everybody, you know, a normal person.
they think it's
Yeah.
agriculture is the number one.
That's
You know, you would
correct.
think Wall Street, everybody would think New
Right.
York
Right.
State, oh,
But
there's
tourism
billions
is
of
number
dollars.
two.
Tourism is number 2.
Right.
That's correct.
And the fourth is Wall Street and finance. Yeah.
Probably the difference between agriculture and Wall Street is that there's a lot more of fluidity with cash than there is with agriculture, because, you know, there's farmers out there that have huge investments, you know, and maybe a couple of 20s in their pocket.
It's all green.
It's all
Wall
green,
Street or
you know.
upstate, and the farms, it's all
Yeah,
green.
but are young people getting into, I mean, you say the Grange, but are you dealing with young people? I guess you're a young person, but you live in Albany, you must not have too big a farm. You know, are young people walking away from it? Do you see what's the future hold?
Emily, why don't you address that?
Well, I think in regard to farming, there are definitely a lot of initiatives, like Steve was talking about, a lot of scholarships, and that entices people to go into that field. There are a lot of other organizations in New York State that the Grange can partner with, or they can relay that information to other younger people. The shirt that I'm wearing specifically, Apathy Not Allowed on it, is through the National Grange for Youth and Young Adults to encourage not farming, but legislative awareness, and to teach young people about what their surroundings are. So we really are focused on helping youth and young adults as well.
You know, but I would think, I'm asking you because you know, but you know, there is this almost like organic movement. You know, people want good food. It's not like just give me some food, or even like we were just joking around going to the grocery store. I mean, people are really into the food. They want organic food. They want nutritious food,
Kosher
non-GMO food. You know, people are really into food. So you would think there's not 100%, but just a growing people. Hey, we're into food and maybe farming our own pure, organic, and proper food. I mean, I'm just thinking about, you know, food is always, no one can walk away from food. It's got to be.
That's true.
It's got to be there.
And you're right on with that standpoint, and that is that there's beginning to be a little bit of a paradigm shift in relation to younger people and getting involved in, actively involved in agricultural pursuits and this type of thing. And getting involved with organizations at the same time, which they have, there's been a 3 or 4 generation time span when didn't want to get involved with anything, you know.
And you know what? I noticed that drones are very much into the fabric of agriculture.
How's that?
Because when you have so many hundreds of acres, you can fly the drone and you could see from the drone how your crops are doing. and you could, without having to go through the fields, and you could see where the patches are and where you're not.
That's interesting.
That's
growing.
pretty regionalized, right? And I don't think that technology is widespread at this point.
See, I'm cutting edge here.
It's cutting edge. It is coming in. And there's a lot of cutting edge stuff out there. I was at a farm show here a while ago. We're looking at some equipment, and there is equipment out there that works off satellite. And when it is say drilling in corn in the springtime, there are sensors in there that reads the type of soil and how much fertilizer it's going to need for that particular space where they are in the field, and how many seeds per inch and this type of thing, all right off the bird.
That's right. And I wanted to just leave you on this one note that Paul Tonko once told me, and he told me I didn't have to credit him, but it was like 30 years ago he said this, that when people think of New York State, they think of skyscrapers, the bright lights on Broadway, and the Statue of Liberty. But the real New York State, the silos are our skyscrapers, the bright lights in the milking barn at 5 a.m. are the bright lights of New York, and the liberty to farm one's own land is the liberty of New York State.
Yep, he's spot on that one.
All right, with that, we want to thank you for, listen, we need all to eat. Your industry will never get out of
That's right.
whack. But continue going, and on behalf really for all the farmers that, they need a lot of mazel, you say a lot of luck and success and help from heaven. And they should have it and should have abundant crops, and everybody should have a good meal and eat well and thanks to the farmers.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much for your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation to join you.
You're welcome.